Let's get in Sanjeev Prasad, who's back on the show with us after a while. He's Senior Executive Director and Co-Head, Kotak Institutional Equity. Sanjeev, good morning. Good to have you with us here. Thanks very much for your time. Since I have you and this news on UPL is coming in this morning as well, before I get to the market, I just like very broadly to get your thoughts on what this would mean. UPL acquiring what it already doesn't own of Advanta. How would you see this without looking at the details, the swap, etc.?
Honestly, I really can't comment on this for the simple reason we are actually advisors to the transaction. So I don't want to make any comment, which can be construed wrongly. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I didn't know that. Sorry. Anyway, let's move on. Sanjeev, what's your view on the market? How are we placed now? It seems to be getting tougher by the week. Pretty disjointed set of news flow. Earnings are disappointing.
Yeah.
Nothing really. Yeah, go on.
I see the problem is there are just too many things going on, to draw any conclusions in a very, conclusive fashion. If you look at on the positive side, we are seeing some reforms being pushed by this government. We have seen positive developments on FDI, road and power sectors. Also, to some extent, it looks like we are seeing the worst of the sell-off in the emerging market space, and valuations, at least in parts of the EM space, have become reasonably okay. At the same time, a lot of currencies have corrected quite significantly. So from both equity and currency market perspective, at least some parts of the EM markets are looking fine. At the same time, the consensus on the US Fed rate increase is more or less pricing in a 25 basis point increase in the next FOMC meeting and a small gradual increase after that. So basically dovish commentary kind of a thing. So all those are positives. If you look at the other side, again, there are a lot of developments which you can construe the other way. With the parliament, will start session a few days later, and the problem here is that we don't know which way things go, whether you will see some progress on legislation, particularly on GST. Already there are some murmurs coming out of the JDU based on whatever news I've read that it wants to review its support for GST. So that's clearly not good news. Anything untoward happens outside the parliament affects parliamentary proceedings. You never know how those things affect legislation. Earnings, as you rightly pointed out, you have seen a fair degree of cuts in earning numbers in the second quarter results season. You probably will not see much now, given the fact that there's no urgent need for anybody to revise earnings. But I suspect as we head into the third quarter results, again, you will see some more downgrade, because when I see the numbers on the street, they're still not on the higher side in several sectors. So that process still has to get washed out for another quarter or so, I would think. So when you put everything together, it's not a very great picture, and the term disjointed which you use is actually quite valid. If I take a slightly more longer term view, a 1 year view, then I'm slightly more positive. We are seeing some signs of early signs of economic recovery, and as the government continues with the reforms process, on the executive side, even if legislations like GST, etc., may not move ahead as forcefully as we'd like to see. Hopefully 2-3 quarters down the line, you will start seeing some investment, some turn around in the investment cycle. Early signs are visible as of now, I would say. And second thing is, if you look at the earning numbers, yes, there will be some more cuts, but if I look at, let's say, March 17 numbers, as of now we have about 512 for the Nifty 50 index on a free flow basis. Maybe that goes down to 480 or so. So in that case, this market is maybe at about 16 times, which is okay. And then let's say 6-9 months later, as we start focusing more on March 18, then you're looking at EPS number which is probably closer to 575, 80, I would think, in which case the market looks reasonably valued. So I think there is still 10-12% upside from where we are, assuming you see somewhere about 530 rupees EPS on an average for March 17 and March 18 years put together.
Okay. So I mean, it's generally tough. I mean, not clear, and it's don't expect the markets to take off or anything, right, Sanjeev?
Yeah, I would be surprised. There is always, the year-end phenomenon is there. We are heading into that, and there is one more data point expected as far as the U.S. Action as far as U.S. Fed rate increase is concerned. So the November payroll data is still going to come out, which will come out in early December before the next FOMC meeting. So if it is a soft data, then who knows? You could see a postponement. And suddenly you are back on a risk-on rate. But if the more likely scenario of reasonably strong employment data coming out, you would see an increase as far as the US Fed rate is concerned. But as most of the policymakers have been pointing out, if anything, the increase will be pretty gradual after that. So you could still see some rally, once this news is already there, and to some extent it's largely priced in. So what happened in October, you saw risk-on trade in across all asset classes. You had crude prices going up, commodity prices going up. All the emerging markets moving up. So you could see a similar move once the rate increase happens, and there is somewhat dovish commentary around that of gradual increases post the first increase. Of course, this has to also to be backed by some positive news in India in terms of movement on reforms, whether on the executive side or legislative side.
So it's possible that actually we get a year-end rally, which may even last after the Fed hikes, right? But eventually, people will start to factor in the longer-term prospects for India, for emerging markets, and that is tough.
Correct. Yeah. It's tough generally everywhere. You're seeing a global environment which is not very supportive as far as growth is concerned. But from a India-specific point, if we sort of keep working on reforms, then at some point in time, you will see confidence coming back into both consumption and investment. And I think that's the more important thing to focus on. I think if this government continues to do some of the stuff which you saw over the last 2-3 weeks, then I'm reasonably hopeful that in the next 2-3 quarters, you start seeing some revival on the investment cycle side. And that also results in consumption picking up. Anyway, the 7th Pay Commission report implementation will give some stimulus to consumption. So I think the 1-year picture is quite okay. I think we just have to go through maybe 1 or 2 quarters of earnings cut and some uncertainty as far as the issues around the US Fed rate increase, the first one, is concerned. I think after that it should be a lot better.
Okay, but doesn't this look like we find ourselves in the same kind of situation maybe even a year back, where the near term looked muddy, but from a year's perspective, the talk was that it looks better? So we are again in that same mind frame. It's not improving, but hope is that it will improve in about a year's time.
Yeah, we always live on a T+1 basis, I guess. But having said that, the last 6 months have been pretty disappointing from India perspective, as also for many of the EMs. So what we hope for is, finally we start seeing some progress on reform, which have probably stagnated since the budget session. The budget session, if you look at, was pretty productive. We had some very good legislations in terms of the Coal Mining Act and the Mines and Mineral Development Regulatory Act, the Insurance Act, all getting through Parliament. But after that, not much has happened, whether on the executive side or the legislative side. And of course, the monsoon session was pretty disappointing in the sense you didn't have a session, actually a proper session. So now if things pick up on the executive side, you've already seen the government in doing the right things in terms of FDI liberalization policy, which came out a couple of weeks back. Some very good reforms on the road sector side. A reforms package at least put in front of the state, not whether it's up to them to implement it. So if some of these things continue, and the benefits of some of the early legislation, such as more transparent allocation of let's say coal mines and other mineral blocks, etc., start coming through in terms of the actual implementation of that, then I can make a case for some improvement in the investment cycle 2-3-4 quarters down the line. So it's obviously still we are looking at a recovery only 2-3 quarters down the line, but at least the enabling framework is looking a lot better compared to what it was last year. Last year it was all on hope, actually. This will pass, that will pass, this will happen, that will happen. But of course, you saw some things happening in the start of the year, then middle of the year there was complete stagnation, and now we are seeing some amount of pick up on the reform side.
Sanjeev, is it so? The government seems to be. Actually, I'm asking you for your sense and your feedback when you talk to investors, is it that investors are unhappy with the pace of reforms, or they realize that the government is fixing problems in many sectors, as is visible, power, roads, etc. It's working hard, and they realize that, and it's just the economy which will take its own time. I mean, there's nothing you can do beyond a point. You can't force people to buy things, right? So I mean, it's that. Which one is it?
See, the problem with expectations have been that in India we always turn down to things too much, and I will blame the entire community for that, whether it is the media, whether it is the broking community, investors, everybody in the same boat, at the same time. So, either we get too excited or too depressed, and last year, we were expecting things, reforms to happen at the drop of a hat, but it's India ultimately. It's a parliamentary democracy system, it's a federal nature of governance, institutional quality is not that great, so it's natural that things will take time to get implemented in a country like India. So clearly the government is trying very hard. I think everybody understands that. The strategic direction is right as far as reforms are concerned. The intent is there. I think everybody appreciates that. The frustrating part is the pace of reforms, and I think that what investors and I guess people even like us need to appreciate better is the fact that it's not always easy to implement things in India, despite having the best intentions. I mean, look at things like power distribution reforms. Everybody keeps asking, why can't the government do anything? I mean, how can the government do anything? It's a state subject at the end of the day. It can at best put together patch reforms, and hope that the states ultimately implement it. The central government can always give money to the state government, but we have seen the outcome of so many packages in the past. I mean, nothing comes out of it. Money simply gets wasted. So of course, there are limitations of doing things in India, given the nature of the constitution, the parliamentary system, federal nature of governance, and so on and so forth. So obviously, investors understand some of those things, but of course do not have the patience, to keep on hoping that at some point in time India will deliver. But I think over the last 2-3 weeks, whatever reforms we have seen, at least should give some assurance to the investors that this government means business, it's on the right track. Then you just need to be a little bit more patient about some of the things. The other thing is, so far investors haven't had much choice among the emerging markets, and India to some extent has become a default market in the sense the macroeconomic situation is good, and you have a generally a reformist government, I would say, and there are not too many options within the emerging market space. So the risk India runs is at some point in time, some of the other emerging markets start looking more attractive, either in terms of valuations, which already is the case in some of the emerging markets, or some of the emerging markets start doing the right things in terms of reforms, etc. And that is where India could see some risk, because investors have been generally very overweight India to the extent of about 80 to 100% overweight compared to the general weight of India in various benchmarks. So that is something we need to be a little bit careful about. So from that perspective, reforms become imperative, and at some point in time the reforms have to translate into earning numbers, because that's what ultimately matters as far as the market is concerned.
Fair enough. Sanjeev, let's just come to the market, and let me ask you, do you find any opportunities, significant mispricing for investors who are able, who are willing to look beyond a year, 2 years?
That is largely there, I would say, in some of the commodity names and some of the government-owned, public banks and regulated utilities. There are 3 areas where I see some amount of mispricing. Most of these are government companies, so naturally people are somewhat skeptical about, the way the returns will pan out in some of the names, given the historical experience has not been very good with investment in the government-owned companies. So the one obvious thing to me is, the regulated utilities look pretty attractively valued at this point in time. If you look at both NTPC and Power Grid, both are trading at about 9 to 10 times on the March 17 basis, and will deliver something like 35 to 40% earnings growth between March 16 and March 18. The numbers are, fairly simple to understand. The regulated businesses, as long as they continue with the CapEx program and add to the regulated equity base, the earning numbers will come through. Despite that, investors have still been somewhat skeptical about these names because of the worries about, government divestment always acting as an overhang on the stocks. The second area where at least we have been pushing for some time and thankfully has played out is some of these government-owned energy companies. Obviously, there was some amount of mispricing which was there in case of, let's say, GAIL at about 280 rupees, where people are very concerned about the last gas contract and low oil prices, how it affects the earning numbers. And I would think even ONGC at current levels is somewhat mispriced. So those are the names I can see in the market where at least from a positive side you could make some money if some of the issues get addressed, specifically in the upstream names if the government actually reduces cess as being asked by the oil ministry, and I think that's a sensible suggestion, and you could see some earnings upside for the likes of KN Oil and ONGC, and ONGC looks quite okay at current levels, I would think. On the other side, I'm still very concerned about the valuations of the consumer staple names, given a combination of lower inflation in India in the medium term, plus higher interest rates globally, and as when the US starts raising rates, and the kind of multiple the stocks are trading at. If you exclude ITC, most of our covered stocks are trading at about 35 times on a March 17 basis. So you could see still some amount de-rating in these names over the next 1 to 2 years. So that's an area where I think there is some amount of mispricing on the upper side.
Sorry, in oil, you said ONGC, there's Oil India, there's Kane, right? GAIL, you said you
GAIL
found it
also.
attractive at
GAIL
about
also.
under 300. Okay, still, it's about 350 now.
Yeah, I think still it's fine, I think, because you still have some catalyst which can play out over there. One is the review of the transmission tariffs, which will happen by March. The regulators already agreed to revising the tariffs upward. And I think it's also a very good play on crude oil prices. So given where crude prices at $45 a barrel, dated Brent, I would think the chances of crude prices going up are much higher than the chances of crude prices going down. So I can take a call on, something like GAIL even at current levels.
Okay. Are you building in this new revised agreement which was reported with RasGas? Lower price, which will drop the price of LNG by $4-5?
No, we haven't built it in because there's no confirmation of it. Is obviously still something which is reported in the press. So let's see, but it does have a significant impact on the earnings of GAIL, particularly for the petrochemical business, which is as of now making large losses. If the price of LNG comes down $4 to $5 per million BTU, then GAIL's EPS will increase about 4 to 5 rupees per share. If you look at some of the parts valuation, which is 360, we are ascribing zero value to the petrochemical business. So 4 to 5 rupees EPS would mean about 40-50 rupees addition to the some of the parts valuation.
Okay. What about Reliance Industries?
We are fine with it. Over the next 1 year, you would see some amount of positive news flows on the commissioning of the 2 new projects. So, in fact, the coke gasification units will start being commissioned from the next quarter, and by September they should be fully operational. After that, the off-gas cracker will start getting commissioned, and by March, I assume it will be up and running. So I think June 17 quarter, if you look at, you could probably see somewhere about 25 rupees EPS for the company, which will be the first quarter after the commissioning of the 2 new projects. So if I analyze that, I'm looking at about 100 rupees EPS, adjusted for treasury shares, that's about 110 rupees EPS, and 10-11 multiple. I think the stock can easily go up to about 1100-1200 rupees over the next, let's say, 9-10 months, when people feel more comfortable about the contribution from the 2 new projects. On top of that, you will get more clarity on the telecom project. As of now, everybody is giving it zero value, if not negative value in the market.
Okay, fair enough. When you said you were cautious on discretionaries, would it include autos as well? I mean, something like a Maruti, which pretty much everyone is bullish on.
No. We are cautious on the consumer space, more on valuations.
As you said, not
and some of. Yeah, staples, not discretionary. Yeah.
Okay, all right, fair enough. And when you said commodities, I was wondering if you were going to talk about some base metal type names, but you're sticking to oil related names, right?
Yeah, see, the problem with metal names is they're all too very heavily dependent on China, and clearly China, the whole economy is re-engineered more towards consumption rather than investment, and if that is the case, then the consumption of metals will be affected for the next few years, not just in 1 year or so. So unless and until you see a lot of capacity being taken out of the system on a permanent basis, I can't make a case for being very excited on the base metal space. If you look at oil, for example, China only accounts for about 12% of the total oil consumption in the world. And also in most of the oil production globally, it's a declining resource at the end of the day. Every year you will see some 2-3% decline in many of the mature fields globally, whereas demand still keeps on increasing. So if you look at the math over the next 2 years for oil, you're looking at about 2.4 million barrels per day of incremental oil demand for 16 and 17 put together. And if you look at on the supply side, at least based on whatever IEA is projecting, a decline of about 1.2 million barrels per day as far as non-OPEC supply is concerned. So clearly you're looking at some amount of tightening as far as the oil market is concerned. So I can make a case for oil prices going up rather than down over the next 12-15 months. Having said that, I don't think oil prices will go up significantly beyond $60 a barrel for the simple reason that 60s, low 60s, the cost of production is still, if you look at the full cost of production for shale oil, that's somewhere about low 60s. That's basically both operating costs, that's also capex, and the other capex is very high given the amount of new wells we need to be drilled on a constant basis to keep production at a stable rate. So at $60 a barrel, a lot of new production from shale oil fields will again come back into play. So I think the range is more like low 40s to low 60s over the next 2 years, I would think.
One other name where there is a fair bit of interest, but there is this divestment now news as well, which is Coal India, Sanjeev. What are your thoughts from a 2 year plus type of time horizon? How does that one look?
I think Coal India, if you look at, you will see significant volume growth in the company over the next 5 years. I think you can easily compound it about 8-9% of volume growth for the next 5 years or so. So that is a good part of the story. The negative side is, there's still a lot of regulatory issues which I'm still not very clear about, in a sense, obviously, first of all, if you look at royalty on coal, is not a very high figure to start with. This company actually makes very, very high ROE. So my worry always is with such a company is what if the government tomorrow decides to increase royalty on coal, or have some other additional taxes on coal, just based on the concerns about the climate. A lot of talk about carbon tax, and PM Modi actually commented it in one of his speeches in the UN Assembly. So I don't know how regulations are going to evolve over here. If you look at the more longer term picture, which is the 5 years and beyond story, then how relevant is coal in India's scheme of things? Obviously it will still be relevant from a base power perspective, but incrementally you would see more and more power being put up through the renewables route. And given India's targets, whether coal will have the same relevance 5-10 years down the line, I'm not very sure. So that is what my concern is about the stock. If things look fine from next 2 year perspective, earnings will still grow. Assuming there are no regulatory issues out there. But on a slightly longer term basis, it's a bit harder to get too excited about this name. If you do a simple math, this year, for example, that is March 17, this company will do about roughly 26-27 rupees EPS. And if you take 8-9% CAGR in volumes, assuming the profitability per ton, that is EBITDA per ton, remains at about 320-325 rupees per ton for coal, then you're looking at somewhere about low 40s EPS, 40-43 rupees EPS in March 22 year. And this company is trading at about 8 times March 22 year. Which means, on an ex-growth basis, you're already discounting a lot of good news in terms of volume growth coming through. but not any of the regulatory risk of higher royalty or additional carbon tax, clean energy, whatever forms of climate-related tax which could come in. And who knows, tomorrow the government wakes up and says, we need, to reduce the cost of power in the country. We have already done it through, transfer of, some of the debt owed by the SEBs to the states. And, maybe we could look at a review of pricing of Coal India. 100 rupees cut in price of coal will not damage Coal India's profits too much. It will still make about, low 20s ROE, which is quite fine. But, that's about 5 rupees EPS. So, given the amount of issues involved over here, you can make a case for 1 or 2 years, but I think the longer term picture is slightly more complex over here.
All right, fair enough. You did mention PSU banks as well, right? Where there is, you think there is significant mispricing. What is that based on? I mean, are you saying eventually there's be some solution found to the problems, or is there any? Is this hope, Sanjeev, or you think it's being fixed? It'll slowly get better.
No, it's mispricing only versus what we have seen historically. I am no guru as far as valuations of PSU banks are concerned, because honestly I don't even know what the book is for many of these names. But having said that, the one name I think people can look at current levels is SBI. It just did for about 50 rupees, which is the value of all the subsidiaries put together, and many of the subsidiaries are actually doing very well. If you look at the life insurance business of SBI, that's a very, very good business. Asset management business is pretty decent. You have some of the smaller, SBI subsidiaries over there, the bank ones. You take out 50 rupees from the current stock price, you're left with about 190 rupees EPS. Adjusted book value for March 17 will be about 170 rupees. So the stock is available at about 1.1 times on the March 17 adjusted book, which is not too bad. Obviously, there are concerns on the asset side, but having said that, I think SBI among the PSUs looks a lot better. And if I look at Axis, ICICI, SBI on the asset side, I think all of them have similar issues. At least between the three, I can make a case for SBI at least discounting a lot of bad news, whereas on Axis, which has still just started reporting some amount of issues, with Abhijit Power being one of the names which came out in the second quarter. You don't know. I think there are still a lot of assets we need to resolve in the case of all the three entities, but at least the SBI looks the cheapest among the three. Liability side, I think, is equally good for all the three banks.
Sanjeev, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us